Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be here. I'm going to take you through the journey of Agile. I'm going to be telling you the story, telling you why Agile has come, why is it important for you, and more importantly for your organization. And hopefully, by the end of the presentation, I'll be able to answer some of your tough questions. But before I begin my presentation, I want to tell you that President has been very kind to offer some gift hampers after the presentation. Unfortunately, I've chosen 3 participants from the group already. They've been very quiet. And I have informed them that I would be picking out their names because they're very quiet. They're the introverts. Okay. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Alvin Toffler was one of my favorite authors, who was a futurist who looked into the future. Not just immediate future, but what is going to happen 5 years, 10 years down the line. Not like an astrologer, but somebody who would look at people's behaviors, understand how things work, how we are moving, how the education system started. Why is it important for us to be competitive? Which age are we competing in? And why is it important for us to think that way? So in order to understand Agile frameworks, you have to look at it from a project management perspective, going back till 1912, when Frederick Taylor started his first scientific management starting from division of labor. You are this, your job is to do this. We then moved into 1999. Henry Gantt developed Gantt charts. I'm sure you guys are all using Gantt charts. You're still using them. And then 1951, Booz Allen and Hamilton, one of the famous consulting firms in the US, developed PERT charts. I'm sure you're quite aware of PERT charts as well. This was all back in industrial age. Industrial age. 1969, Project Management Institute was formed. It's known as PMI. And just around that area, 1969 and onwards, the whole notion of knowledge work started. Knowledge work. Are we knowledge workers? So, traditional project management, like most of us do and still practice, is work the plan the work, and work the plan. You plan out everything, and then you start working on it. Great for definable, predictable projects. You know exactly what the outcome is going to be. Difficult to work with vague and changing requirements. More difficult, Gantt charts, work breakdown structure, network diagrams. It was all seduction of uncertainty. It was just putting some things together, but you can't manage uncertainty, can you? Will these charts really help, especially in Europe in this age? So, land-based economy, factory-based economy, and then we're talking about knowledge-based economy. Knowledge workers act and communicate specific knowledge, specific subject knowledge areas. Now, some of the examples of knowledge workers are IT professionals like yourselves, doctors, teachers, lawyers, and professors. So now, I want you to think like knowledge workers, okay? How many of you don't think you are a knowledge worker in this group? Here's a quick test. If your work is visible, specialized, and stable, you're working in an industrial age. The factories used to work like that. The work now is invisible. You can't see it. It is holistic, it is changing. The emphasis before, there was strong emphasis saying that emphasis was running things. Now, the emphasis is on improving things. How do we improve? Right? How do we make things better? The emphasis before was all about asking the right question, right answers, giving the right answers. Now, the emphasis has changed. It's not about giving the right answers anymore. It's about asking the right questions. Strict standards versus continuous innovation. Performance measures versus continuously teaching and learning. So, we translate that to human interaction management. It's a framework. I would strongly suggest that if you get a chance, you should study that. How that effective knowledge work is really translated into agility and agile methods. Empowering teams. Daily stand-up from progress reporting versus communicate in a structured way. Create, share, and maintain knowledge versus retroscope, reviews, trying to continuously improve. Align your time with strategic goals versus iterations and time boxes. Negotiate next steps as you work versus adaptation and progressive elaboration. Learning small baby steps, traveling in small increments, making those increments at every cycle. So, before, your target was fixed. And it's very easy to shoot a fixed target, right? Because all it needs is aim, 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 shoot. But what about if your target is moving? You can't aim, aim, and shoot, right? You have to point the missile in the right direction. You have to fire, and then you have to steer. Your target is moving. You point in the right direction, you execute, and then you steer again. So, if you are working in an area where your target is fixed, meet me after my presentation. I want to give you my resume. I want to work for you. It's a very simple way of doing it, but it's not how businesses operate these days. So now we come into the crux of real issue. Being agile versus doing agile. Agile is a mindset delivered by values, guided by principles, and manifested through different practices. Manifested through different practices. How are most of the organizations doing it? They are approaching it from the other end. They are doing agile. They are picking up the practices and saying, we are doing agile, we're doing Scrum, we're doing retroscope, we're doing extreme programming, we're doing SAFe, we're doing agile battlefield, we're doing DSDM. The other way, say the right way of doing agile, is approaching from being agile way. Starts with the mindset, then you use that understanding to select and implement the correct practice, tailoring them to fit to different situation as needed. Clearly, being guided by these 4 principles as below. Working software over comprehensive documentation, responding to change over following plan, individual interaction over contract negotiation, and customer collaboration, over process and tools, customer collaboration over contract negotiations. Now stop for a moment. It's very easy to put up a slide. Think for a moment, what do you do in the organization? 90% of our time is focused on contract negotiation. At least with the organizations that I've worked with. 90% of the time is focused with process and tools. 90% of the time is focused about following plan. What does the plan say? You're going to say, right? And a lot of times we're spending so much time in developing documentation. This is a fact. Some people are improving, it's good news. But if you really put a matrix and see where your matrix are and how are you measuring those matrix, it's very clear that we are valuing things below more than things which we ought to value. So, as I said, it's very easy for any one of us to put up a slide here, but very difficult to implement in an organization. That's the number one rule. The number two is even if one person changes, it's going to make a significant difference in how Agile is developed. If one team changes and develops and adopts Agile framework, it's going to be a big difference to the organization. And even if the organization itself embraces Agile, it's going to be a huge difference in what it can accomplish, in the given time frame that has been allotted. So, where organization change is through influence exerted by individuals. And I see each of you as a unique individual that has come to this course, to this class, to this conference, who can act as a change agent in your organization. It's not very difficult, but it's going to be very difficult on you, because your organization might be thinking just the opposite, right? When you go back, you'll probably be doing the same thing which you've been doing before. So how do we change that organizational mindset? First, you need to think Agile. They say everything, it starts from here. If you can't think Agile, you cannot do Agile. Second is doing. You have to practice. You got to take baby steps. You may fall, you have to get up, and you have to relearn. So the biggest illiterate people of the 21st century are the ones that are not willing to learn, relearn, and unlearn. And third, you need to encourage other people. Because only when you encourage people, people will be there. I'll tell you a story. In 2011, when I was in New York, one of the vice presidents of a company told me, Vivek, this company went bust because they developed their software in Agile. The Agile system just couldn't handle the load and the security features that the online training required. The same person I met, 2015 in Manila, told me, Vivek, in 2025, over 80% of software development are going to be following Agile framework. Same person. I'm not going to name the person or the organization, but see how the mindset is changing. So think Agile, do Agile, and encourage Agile. Become persuasive. Persuade others to Agile mindset and practices. Process can be a complete transformation for the organizations. Okay. So how does organization change? Agile is about individuals. It's about team. Team makeup of individuals. And that is why we say we are knowledge workers. Right? Are we industrial workers? Are you guys working in a factory? So the whole thinking needs to change. And basically it needs to start changing with myself and with yourself. So we need to establish the need. This is slightly different than Kotter's model of change or ITL model that uses create a vision. Until and unless you have a vision, you can't change. Now, you may be able to make your own individual vision. You have to help your team to make that vision. You have to help the organization to make that vision. Communicate that vision. Plan for short wins and consolidate improvements. Consider both strategic and HR issues, HR related, because we are dealing with individuals. We're dealing with human beings. We're dealing with sentiments. And it's the people that's going to make Agile work for them. I think that is a very important part, and that is why we have form of coalition, encourage employee participation, reward incentives, and institutionalize new approaches are key factors. The next slide I show you is a little bit daunting. Daunting meaning it is scary. Foxconn. Have you heard about this company? Foxconn is a company based in Shanghai region in China that still makes major parts for Apple, especially for the iPhones that most of you carry. When the iPhones took the market up, within a month, there were 16 suicides. And Foxconn's response to control suicide was put the nets. These are the nets. मान्छेहरू माथिबाट हाम फालेर आत्महत्या गर्छ मर्छ मान्छे किन मर्छ भनेर उ गर्ने हैन कि त्यहाँ तल जाली राख्ने हाम फाल्यो भने जालीमा जान्छ तल खसेर मर्दैन भनेर. Okay? So rather than addressing the issue and doing a root cause analysis, because these guys had to overwork, they were not producing, they were in constant pressure, to meet the demand, to meet the market requirements. And they had to work 18 hours, 19 hours. People lost their families. They were in tremendous stress, losing a job. So 1 month, 16 people committed suicide. And this was what the organization's response was, putting net across. Change is difficult. It's not easy. We start from a level of comfort, because where most of you are, or where you've progressed, you're in a level of comfort. You don't want to change. It's like driving a motorcycle if you've not driven one. It's like driving a car. It's almost like making a presentation if you're making a presentation for the first time. You go through confusion and loss, you go through turmoil and despair, and then slowly and gradually, you would improve. You would have the growth, and you would get that confidence. So, your stakeholders, your bosses, your investors, what are they concerned about? Your executives and project sponsors are concerned about business failure. Hamro business e tat paltine ho ki? Agile ma gaera? Are we going to lose a lot of money? Will we make that profit? Or are we going to incur a loss? Your managers are probably going to feel they're going to be out of control because it's a team role, right? So why would I need a manager? Mero jagire khatam hune ho ki? Development team will also resist and say, well, we're doing development different way. We're doing development with expertise. Why do we need a team? Ma ekle garihalchu ni team kina chahiyo? There's no need for it. The team will resist. This is a new approach. We don't know whether it'll work or not. Your user community will be worried if they'll get all the features they require or there will be poor quality deliverables. And your supporting groups, the people that you work with, your friends, your bosses that provide you structural support, may also feel that they are losing control. Continual request for involvement, and it says it lacks clear point. He says you're doing Scrum. I met one of my friends, who's running an outsourcing company, and he says, all the engineers are hiding behind one word called Scrum. I don't know what it means. So he's fearing from his perspective, lack of control. Is it a dark knowledge that people want to keep themselves, and when they tell us that we don't feel very comfortable of? So this is where I mean that it's important to keep the stakeholders involved. Visibility. This is one you think need to talk about. We do agile teams. How it increases the adaptability, the market changes. Third, the business value it creates. It's not about technology, it's about creating business value. And let me tell you something. My first lecture in Agile was in a German institute. And the German professor told me, Vivek, the reason why we implement Agile is not because it produces things faster, it puts team spirits very high, you deliver good results. Because there is very good return on investment. That is why we are investing in Agile. But don't tell that to the development community. The return of investment, because you are doing delivery faster, quicker, and more accurately. And fourth is risk. Now, both of them comparing with Agile procedures versus traditional approach. So with this, I want to end my presentation. I want to answer the question that the gentleman had at the end. What are the 3 things would you say would be good for us to do? Number 1, understand what it means to be agile. Because it has different meaning, different connotations, different personas for different individuals. Understand organization culture, not just the process and structure, because this is the easiest thing to change. Processes are very easy to change. Structures are very easy to change, but the culture is what is at the center. And the third, adequate change organization plan with HR. Not we just the guys saying that this is where we're going to cut. Because if you cut, you're cutting your roots. रुखको जरै काटिसकेपछि त रुख त उम्रिँदैन. So these are my recommendations, and apparently they are in line with a lot of recommendations that the PMI provides as well. So with this, I want to end my presentation. To the company, don't try to chase a dog with a train. And for employees, build the momentum. Should know the iceberg is melting. A couple of penguins in Antarctica discovered that the iceberg was melting. And one penguin went to the other penguin in the herd saying, iceberg is melting. And they said, we have been living in the ice for so long. How can you say the iceberg is melting? Maybe you've gone crazy. And slowly they started realizing that iceberg was really melting. So the 2 messages that I want you to take to your organization before you become operational again tomorrow is do 2 things. To your company, tell them you can't chase a dog with the train. And for yourself, understand that the iceberg is melting. So thank you very much for listening. Now I have 3 questions that I have requested the participants to ask me. One is from Mr. Yadav from EB Pearls. Where is Mr. Yadav? I know he was going to do that. I know he was going to do that because he is one of the guys who's been very quiet. And I told him that, look, don't miss my presentation. Second is Mr. Lalan Yadav. Apparently, I have nothing for the Yadavs or against any other community. You see, it's very difficult to make a radical change. Change has to be incremental so that people can digest it. Organization can accept it. If you try to make a radical change, there's going to be a radical fear among people. People are not going to like it. I think change needs to be introduced in a gradual fashion. You know, establishing a need for change. Why do we have to change? Why are dinosaurs extinct? Why are we moving? Why did the vice president, who told me this Agile is going to fail, and 2015-16, he tells me, well, by 2025, Gartner has predicted over 85% of application development is going to be in Agile. Waterfall is gone. Now, it's a prediction, but it's not based on his experience, it's based on the facts that are coming out. So I would say incremental changes. Mr. Meru Raja, where is he? You're at the back. You're a very quiet person. That's why I picked you up.
Hello, I'm Ashish from BrainResit. I have a question regarding the Agile implementation is that when the organization is implementing Agile in their company and the executives, managers are ready to implement and they have built some processes to implement, but still the mindset of the development team, the engineers in the development team, still they are doing the Agile ceremonies, but still their mind stops, their mindset is not the Agile, not being Agile. So can you suggest some ideas or to overcome this challenge, how to change the mindset of the development team to actually being Agile? Thank you.
You think I can tell them what not to do rather than suggesting them what to do? You know, every organization is different. Every individual is different. We have gone through an education system where we have been taught not to be agile, especially in this part of the world. It's ingrained in our mind, right? Even though I give so much talks about these things, I personally feel sometimes a lot of my actions are not agile, but I'm making that improvement slowly. It's a constant battle. You can't change it overnight. Maybe you need to provide coaching to him. Maybe he needs to be on a different team. The organization would have to understand and invest on his potential. You see, not everybody can do the same role because we are all different and we all think differently. We act differently. You know, so there are various methods. I can't tell you this is the right method to do it. I think developing a culture is very important, and that is why most of the agile implementation starts from the top. They say if the CEO is educated, if your CIO is educated, or if your C-suite is educated in agile, then they will have people try to do it in the organization. They would change themselves. When they change themselves, they will make it easier. The team that Iceland, Anil showed, the Iceland team, the role of a coach was very important in that team. You know, and especially coaches are the ones, they make you practice what is known as broken plays. Those plays really don't happen in the real game. But since you go through that drill, you understand where things are going wrong and how to avoid them. I think organizations should actually try to use this way of using coaches, who are available here. I'm not a coach, so I can't do that job. To do that and help organization, at least try to embrace and have some right steps, taking the right steps. Every organization is different. Every organization's capital is different. Every organization investors are different. We have to respect that, right? So, turmoil, going through a turmoil is any time when you're trying to do something new. When you're trying to ride a bicycle, you go through that pain. You cut yourself, you fall down, then you wake up, and suddenly one morning, you know you can drive a bicycle. But you have to make that steps. You have to try that on. It's radical. The thinking is very, very different. And it requires us to embrace these things. So the approaches are slow, but it's always better to have an experienced hand. It's like going to a doctor who's going to tell you what kind of medicines you would need to have, rather than going to a chemist shop and taking those medicines by yourselves. By the way, you can do that in Nepal and a lot of other countries, not in the US. So this is my suggestion. Always go for professional help where they can provide you one, or go to people who are willing to do that, willing to work with your team and be able to, measure and matricize your improvement. So Agile is about good development, timely development, meeting your targets, understanding your critical requirements, value-driven delivery, and at the same time, it's about return on investment for your business, okay? This is where it creates the real business value. Not just the program, not just Java, not just your Oracle IIS server or your APIs, microservices, ESB. It's a whole new way of looking at it. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, madam.
I'm Sitapun from Logpoint. You had, in one of the slides, shown that there are different types of challenges and risks at different levels, like executive, project sponsors, managers, development team, and so on. So what are the steps that we should take in order to overcome those challenges at each of those levels?
You guys ask very specific questions. A lot of times I should tell you that I may not be qualified to answer those things. But let me give you certain things that I know. I think one of the most important things, and those folks that have attended the class for the 2 days, I think the most important thing in this team is about trust. When Anil showed that two ladies walking on those across in Twin, it is about trust, right? She had trusted her partner. They were all traveling together. She was not alone. That skydiver on that skycraft, he had a trust on that pilot, right? Because he knows how to fly it. You have to have trust in your team and your organization. That's why the trust factor is very high in this. A lot of people have studied what is called a low trust environment and a high trust environment. You know, apparently in Nepal and in this region, we have what is called a low trust environment. That's why these things take time. In other areas like Scandinavian areas, you know, there's a very high trust environment. They trust each other very highly, but only in their group, not outside. Okay? So all these factors come into play. I think the key factor is, you know, trusting people and saying, hey, these things have improved. Back in 2011, people didn't have trust because they had not seen it. Now they have a proof of concept. They've seen organizations do it over the years and have gotten great results, right? And it's all about building trust. So start with trust building and building the trust with your community, with your people, with everything else. Why I came here was because of the trust. You know, why I spoke is because of the trust. So I think that's a very important part for us to take away, the importance of trust and building that trust. And that's why Scrum has adopted a very important principle about community. Community is about trust, right? Your church community, or your temple community, right? Or your singing community, or a lot of you guys, your alcohol community, right? That's the community you trust the most. When you are in this community, you're so free to talk about everything that comes to your heart. You don't hide anything from them. Because when you are in that part of the community, you have that trust. So that's why the community level participation is very important. Okay, thank you very much.